Stay more comfortable, more concealed, and in the stand longer with Osseo gear. Premium camouflage apparel created for bow hunters by bow hunters. Osseo's revolutionary patented camo patterns and innovative features are designed to keep whitetail bow hunters totally invisible and dead quiet. Elevate your game with Osseo. Visit asiogear.com and take 20% off your purchase with code TRUTH20. Mobile hunters, our buddies over at Tethered, are always innovating to keep us more mobile and in the game when it counts. From the Tethered One Sticks, the Fast Pack, to the Ultra Lock saddle, Tethered is always designing to increase comfort and utility while reducing bulk, weight, and fiddle factor of mobile hunting gear. And now, they've outdone themselves yet again by creating the carbon fiber forged Predator CFX platform, the latest fully featured mobile saddle platform that raises the bar for what's possible in mobile hunting gear. Whether you're new to saddle hunting or an old tree climbing veteran, go to tetherednation.com for all your saddle hunting gear. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today I got on my buddy. You guys recognize that good-looking gentleman on the other end here if you're watching the video. He's the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jared Shifty Scheffler of Whitetail Adrenaline. What's going on, buddy?
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. I always look forward to our chats, dude. You're one of my favorite people to talk to. I always get a boost of energy anytime I get a chance to chop it up with you. So you're a light in sometimes in a dim world of whitetail hunting when you're grinding.
Yeah. It happens. I mean, whitetail hunting's a grind, or can be. So.
Can be, yeah. Where are you at in the grind right now? Like, are you hammering it, or are you laying back, playing it cool for right now? What's your deal?
As far as hunting,
yeah,
I'm just laying back. I was gonna try to get out in September for like 5 to 7 days, and it just didn't really work out. And then I thought maybe here in October I would sneak out for 5 to 7 days, but it looks like it won't work out till later this month. So
yeah,
and then we're gonna hit it. We're gonna hit it. You know, the team is ready to roll out November. So
right, nice.
We're pretty.
Nice. Do you have anybody out now? Is anybody out?
No,
chasing.
No.
Nice.
It got to be where we had so much content that our bottleneck is the post-production.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, would I like to be out there 50, 60 days, or back when I was pushing 100 or an uncuffed Tanner did 120, just over 120 straight and never went back home. But somebody's got to edit all that and produce all that, so,
right.
We just kind of took a look at things or I did and a couple years back and,
right.
Yeah, I love to gun hunt too, but I'm like, if we got to pull back the brakes somewhere in how much we're filming or how many hunts we're filming in a year, we're probably going to do it more on the gun side. So, and we've had some tremendously great bow seasons. So, good stuff coming down the pipe. So
nice. I bet people's families aren't super mad about scaling it back a little bit either. Girlfriends and wives and whatnot, right?
Well, Chancey, he's always kind of mainly just late October and November. So nothing really changed there in terms of how much, he never really got involved too much on the gun side of things and all that. But Tanner, I didn't really need to put the brakes on. He ran so hard that year, and he had for years, that he kind of like, man, this is a lot. And I was like, yeah, you better scale back or you're going to burn yourself out. So he did scale back a decent amount the next year and still did very well on connecting, which people will see in the next production. Nice. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I need to get him on at some point. He's a fellow Pennsylvania guy.
Yeah. Yep. He if you're gonna get him, he's very like low key under the radar. It's hard to get. He's not, with a lot of my guys too. They're not trying to they show up to hunt and stuff, but they're not really trying to create, you know, how do I say this? Their goal isn't really to make a living doing as a professional hunter, I guess maybe is the best way to put it or something.
Right.
So, I can't remember where I was going with that, but,
I mean, they try to stay more low key, Tanner, you know,
Yeah. When it comes to Tanner, he's not, you know, I mean, there's probably a lot of people that have reached out to him direct and he's never even seen the message or doesn't keep up with it. You know, he's just a regular dude.
Yeah.
I mean, a very unique regular dude, which a lot of the guys, everybody is unique, but you know, I'm very blessed with a very dynamically unique set of individuals. I guess would be a good way to put it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I mean, everyone's a little bit different, right? I think that's one of the things I really kind of enjoy about watching the videos is that, you know, everyone's hunting style. There's a kind of a red thread of like how you guys kind of approach hunts, right? But everyone has a slightly different kind of approach to things. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I think, and everyone has a slightly different personality, you know? You know, Chancey's kind of, I'm like, dude, that guy's on fire all the time. Like, I feel like the dude doesn't have like an off switch. I feel like anytime you would hang out with him, like you get the same guy like every time, and it's the same guy you see on video. And I think that's what makes what you guys do so cool. And I feel like, you know, and I don't know Tanner, and I was one of those guys that I did reach out to him, never got a response. You know what I mean? So, and I figured like, I was like, he struck me.
Don't take it personal.
No, I don't. I kind of chalked it up to the fact that he was probably just a guy that doesn't is not on social media a lot and probably doesn't check messages a whole lot. You know what I mean? So there was no offense taken.
Good. Yeah, that's much the case. And two, I think, you know, it's more important that he preserves his love for hunting. And sometimes if you get too involved industry-wise, it can start to eat at that, I think. And so he's protective.
Yeah, I mean, the last time you and I talked, we talked a bunch about that, you know, because it was just and that's a very you
hit me with some very some questions I wasn't expecting. You know, I mean, totally fine, but just very coincidental question. You know, I remember that podcast very specifically.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, it was a lot of the same stuff that I had been kind of thinking, not to the same magnitude that you have a different scope and a different level of a business that you're running and involvement in, you know, the hunting industry and stuff like that in the hunting space. And so things that I have experienced from the same type of burnout or whatever were pale in comparison to, you know, what you were kind of working through. You know, but it was just a good conversation because I think that was like, people don't think about that, right? Like they think about you know, man, I would love to be involved in this, you know, and it's like, and then you don't really realize what all it entails until you are. And, you know, and if you don't, it's just like anything in life. If you don't set up boundaries for things, you kind of start to lose your way a little bit, you know, and that's with everything. Like it's even like a job, a career that you maybe isn't part of your passion. Like if you don't set boundaries, people eat up your time, you know, and start to, you know, you lose yourself in it a little bit, you know, and so it's important to do that. So, but yeah, it was a good conversation, man. I think it was one that needed to be had. But what I wanted to ask you was, I know you said, you know, you were, you know, haven't gotten out yet. You were hoping to get away for like 5 or 7 days. And I was just thinking like, you're probably waiting for that first cold front to move through before you really kind of hit it, right? I'm just kidding.
We got to be careful with that. You know, there's a time and a place where it's advantageous, and there's a time and a place it's like,
right.
I'm sorry, I've just seen the facts of other things too many times, too many oddities to where it's like, so we got on that kick a few years back on the videos, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, and you know, it's true, but it's also, it's one of them relative truths, you know? I mean, there's no doubt, you know, there's no doubt about it. Like a cold front in October and early October and stuff in especially those states like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and, you know, a lot of those wooded states, there's something with it that, I mean, there's no denying it. But then there's other times and places of the year. So it's one of them ones that I don't think you can fixate, I mean, I've seen too many really hot days in the prairie states be gold. So,
yeah. And I think it's also time of year dependent too, right? Like, because to your point, it's like I get more excited about a cold front like in the earlier part of October because it's just going to make things feel a little bit better for me personally and the deer as well. They've got a heavy coat on now. It's a little cooler or whatever. But I think once you get kind of further into the season where you have like cold weather just generally speaking or cooler weather generally speaking, that the cold front becomes less of an issue. And I know you and I talked last year after I killed that deer in Kansas. And I thought of you when I killed that deer because when I killed him, it was 80 degrees. I spotted him on like an 80-degree day, and then the next evening I killed him, and the next day it was like 78 or whatever. You know what I mean? So it was a warm day.
Right. Yeah. Well, and since I started talking about it more and whatnot, there's been some very successful hunters that have told me, that they had kept good records of all of their bucks they had killed over the years. And some of them are they've killed a lot of big bucks. And they said, interesting. I went back and looked, and I was very surprised at what I saw on that to where they're, I mean, like I said, there's a time and a place, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah. Time and a place, right? It's
but I keep that quiet, I mean, now
you got to be sneaky about it.
I don't want a bunch of people out there on them warm front days. No, just kidding.
Right, exactly. So I mean,
too hot to go hunting. Perfect.
Yes, stay home.
Pressure's my biggest problem out there,
Right? Tell me about it, man. I mean, let's talk about that for a little bit because I feel like, I'm stoked that people are, experiencing, chances to go different places and hunt and stuff like that. And I know you've been hunting plain states and stuff like that a lot longer than I have. But even like the amount of time that I've been, I've seen a huge change in just the number of people, and you're right. Like even when I was in Idaho a couple weeks ago, from the first time I went out west to hunt elk to this last time, huge difference in the number of people that I'm running into. And like, we're talking like vast wilderness too. We're not talking about small blocks of like sections cut up like in the plain states or whatever, right? Where it's like, might have, one creek bottom in it and everyone's going to focus on that creek bottom in this section. Right. And I was running into guys out there left and right too. And so it's just, yeah, I mean, it's a real thing, man. It's trying to kill a good critter, whatever species you're chasing, is exponentially harder. I feel like in the past, like 5 to 10 years than maybe it was prior to that. Yeah,
it's there's no denying that the pressure has increased a lot, and there's no denying that the hunters that are hunting public have developed, I'd say, better overall skills on the public. So not only is there an increase, their techniques and methods are getting more fine-tuned and things too. So now we've had some very, very, very good public land seasons the past few years, so I can't complain. But there was a period where, right around that 2017, especially that ride season, where we just struggled. We, it can happen, I mean, it's not easy to go out there and lay down a bunch of footage on public land of big bucks and hitting the ground every year, so. Yeah.
So did you guys start doing anything differently, like based on that? And like, don't give away any of your secrets, because the last thing I want to do is have people change tactics yet again, and you're running into it even more so. But is there anything like in your mind that you guys did differently, or were you just looking for maybe more places that were just overlooked?
I can't really put my finger on it necessarily from our standpoint, because I didn't feel like we really... Yeah, we've gotten more advanced or fine-tuned, but, our general overall style, hasn't really changed, say, over the last 3-4 years compared to before. So, it's one of them spooky like things,
Right.
like
Yeah.
that's where I've chalked it quite a bit of it, honestly, up to, because some of the stuff coming down the pipe is so like
Bananas, dude. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
cause
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, Uncuffed was bananas in some ways, but the stuff coming is, in my opinion, really bananas. With the
Dude,
level,
if it's really bananas,
size.
like if it's really
This,
bananas in comparison to what you've had so far, then it's
yeah,
gonna be next. It's gonna be like
yeah,
otherworldly, because the stuff you guys are pulling off on a
yeah.
regular basis is just. I mean, it's crazy, dude. Just flat out crazy, And the fact that
It,
like you guys get sneaky with the size camera that you get sneaky with blows my mind. Like I
well,
just
and we slimmed it from, it was like 32 pounds and some ounces, and a few years back, so that did help us. We got a couple of cameras in that 17-pound range.
okay.
And so when you're used to chasing these animals in this ways that we are with a 30+ pound camera and trying to pull it off, it's almost like throwing a 17-pound little handy camera is almost like, not like, I don't want to say like shooting fish in a barrel, but all of a sudden it's like, whoa, this makes things a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you do it, under those kind of constraints.
Yeah.
So
I mean, just getting close on your own is hard. Like for people, I forget who I was just talking to recently about it. It was a buddy of mine he's hunting a plain state this year. I think it's his first time hunting a plain state, and so he was asking me a little bit about it. And I'm by no means an expert, right? I screwed up a bunch, and I talked to you, and learned some things and try to put them into practice. Right. But it's like you had all of a sudden screw ups. You shared some stuff with me, and I went out and screwed up for a couple of years, and so I know very little, right? I know, and so he and I were kind of talking about it, and I just said, for me, I'm a guy that I have to experience things to like truly understand them, and I went out to plains for 3 years in a row. And all the different times I talked to you, you would always tell me visual. And we would talk a little bit about getting sneaky, and you want to play in shadows and things like that, right? And you want to be patient, but then whenever it's time to go, you got to go. And like, you really don't get a sense or a feel for that until you do it a couple of times and you screw it up, like when to sit back and when to go, right? But I never really understood the visual part. I mean, I did because I could see out there, right? But once that hunt happened last year, I remember Chad Sylvester and I were talking about it, and I said, I get it now. I was like, because now I feel like when I see a deer, if I see a deer one time, I feel like I can kill him. I was like, I just need to see him once. I was like, I don't even need to see him exactly where I'm going to kill him. I just need to see what he's doing one time, and it finally clicked for me. I was like, I understand what Jared was saying now. I was like, how important that visual is, of like just, it almost feels like there's like a tangible part of it, but it almost feels like a confidence thing with me. Like where if I can see him one time and like he's no longer a ghost, right? And now I feel like I can go kill that deer. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it does. Once you got your beat on one like that, then it's just, after you've done it enough times, it's like every situation's you're re-engineering a new plan. Tricks that worked on your last situation, you can maybe take those and apply it in a certain way, but you're really engineering a whole new set of parameters depending on so many variables of, is this buck locked up with a doe? Is there satellite bucks? If it's not the rut, is there other bachelor group bucks you got to navigate around? And the wind, is the wind switching? Oh, they're in this low spot. Is is there going to be a current that whips my, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like this. Chansey calls it, it's like a new science project, he says. It's like a science project, and I got my visual, and now I need to figure out how all this do and how to film it too. And so yeah, it's I think that's one of the things that makes I realized this several years ago. People used to, and I used to be a part of this, like, I didn't have a very good rut. Well, I realized, I don't know, just over a handful of years, I was like, I don't really notice that anymore. Well, it's because you're actually covering the ground. You're actually, so you're not so dependent on a good rut or a bad rut, because you're kind of finding the rut wherever the hell it is. And so, but where I was going with this is, I think that's partially what makes ground hunting also so addictive is the science project, the figuring out, and you're figuring it out on the fly, like right now, or in that day or in that moment, you're figuring that all out, and it's still very difficult a lot of times to pull off. So when you do, or when you get very, very close, it's kind of like, wow, I may not have got them, but I was very, very close and did a lot of things right. Dude,
and it's so addictive when you get close, because you're just like, you want that taste again, of it just being like right there, and that was the thing that kind of kept me going back. Because I screwed up so many encounters where I got busted drawing, I got winded, I got seen, like, every way you could screw it up, I screwed it up before I actually had success. And what you were saying about how it's a science project, it's such a good way to describe it. And I think what I like most about it, and I'd be curious about your kind of opinion on it, but to me, it's the whole hunt is dynamic, right? Because even like just the hunt that I had, for example, it's when I saw that deer, I went in to kill him, and when I got to the spot that I thought I could kill him, I got there and I was like, the wind was right, but I was like, I'm in the wrong spot. I'm going to be lit up like a Christmas tree in this spot. There's too much like sun on me, right? And so I moved like 30 yards or 20 yards or whatever it was to set up. And then when I moved, I was like, oh man, if he does what I think he's going to do, I'm going to be just like outside the game, And so then I ended up going back to where I started, and the sun's still beating on me. And I just told myself, I was like, if he does what he did last night, and I think he's going to with those does, I just need it to be right for 15 minutes. That's all I need. Like, it can be wrong for the whole time I'm sitting here, because I only need it to be good the last 15 minutes. Sunset, it got right. I was in a shadow, like it all worked out. And that's the part that I love about it. It's like, even when you have like the setup, like the things right, like it changes minute to minute, like in those setups almost, and so you kind of always have to be willing to just kind of make a move.
Science project changes all of a sudden, and that's also another, like, I think the way you put it, dynamic is a great way to put it, because dynamic things happen all the time out there. All of a sudden a deer comes in off your backside that you didn't see, and they pegged you, and it's like, he's not quite close enough yet, and he knows something's up, and it's like, now I got to trick the, you know what I mean? There's all kinds of dynamic, as you say, variables that can come in and cause problems. Yeah. But then if you can figure out how to navigate around them, then it makes the whole story, if it comes together, even that much cooler.
Right. Let me ask you this, man, because I was just thinking about it as you were talking about the dynamic kind of nature of it. And how often do you think that a hunt works out, or that you have success, fill a tag, however we want to say it, because of what you didn't do rather than what you did do? Right. And I'll give you the example. What made me think of it was, as you're talking about the dynamic thing, like all the decisions you have to make, there's a deer coming in on your backside. Now you got to trick this deer, right? I had a decoy with me on that hunt, and my plan was to decoy one in. Well, exactly what you said happened, where I had turned my back for 1 second to look in a different direction, to glass a different area, while I was waiting for these deer to come out, because it was getting late early, and I was like, this might not happen tonight. And so I was kind of planning for the next day, and all of a sudden the does that deer was out slipped in behind me, and they got to like 7 yards before I realized they were on me, right? And my plan was to try to decoy that deer. And now the doe got jiggy, and I thought I might have to flash the decoy at the deer to get him to commit or to get cool. And in my mind, I was like, no, just let him do what he's going to do. And so in that instance, I feel like I ended up killing that deer because of what I didn't do rather than what I did do, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You cut out there for just a bit on that tail end part. So there's about a 10-second gap.
Yeah, what I was saying was like when that deer came in, the does came in behind me early, and they got within like 7 yards of me, and I didn't realize it until they were on top of me. And so my plan was to try to decoy that deer in. And so when they got jiggy, and that I was assuming the buck was going to get a little bit spooky as well because they weren't real comfortable. And so in my mind, I'm going through like all the things I might need to do. And I was like, maybe I should flash the decoy at him and see if I can't get him to commit and make this happen real quick. And then I was like, no, just let him do what he's going to do, you know? And so I ended up killing that deer more likely probably because of what I didn't do rather than what I did do. Right. And so I was just curious, like for you, it's like, how often is it like you know, not doing something is the reason why you end up killing a deer versus pressing, you know, being overly aggressive maybe?
A lot. And that's kind of goes back to dynamic situations, adaptive decision making, right? Mm-hmm. Like premeditated, pre-calculated plans. You're going to have some of that when you put together the science project, you know, but you got to be loose enough with it to be able to adapt and you know, recalculate, I guess, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Being too fixated in the calculations of everything. I recently did a post and I called it the kiss of death. Mm-hmm. You know, I've been doing these, I don't know if you noticed them, but I've been doing these kind of daily flashback stories or whatever. And it's been cool to just kind of type away and take me back to those hunts and stuff. And that's one that that comes to mind there is too calculative of a plan. It's often the kiss of death in this type of hunting, you know, whereas when the variables are more controlled, those calculated strategic plans often work really well. And there's definitely guys on the public land side. Now their styles are different, but they're very effective, skilled, calculated hunters on public land too. They're, you know, it's not always the kiss of death. You know what I'm saying?
It's not a one size fits all. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, it would definitely for us, it would, and it has at times, you know, when we've gotten too calculated on things and gave up. By default, that lessens your adaptability if you get too fixated on the.
Yeah. I would think more often than not, just in my experience, that being, and you're right, like there are guys that are super calculated that, like, you know, have a tremendous amount of success and consistent and stuff like that. But I do feel like more often than not, like you need this loose kind of framework about how you're going to do something and be willing to just kind of make changes as things present themselves, especially in the style of hunting that you guys are doing, especially I feel like on the ground, like you definitely, because to me, like that's the advantage of being on the ground is that you can make a change on a moment's notice, you know?
Yeah.
And that was what I was trying to talk to my buddy about a little bit was, when I'm hunting on the ground now, I was like, especially in plain states and stuff like that, is I feel like I am in the game constantly. Like I'm never not in the game. You know, it's like, I feel like around the next turn, if I get over to this next knob to a glassing spot, or I'm making the next right in my truck, like that could be the thing that just all of a sudden like changes my whole trip, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, and that, I mean, as you were just kind of saying that, I realized when I started doing all these posts over the last couple months of you know, different deer and whatnot in the seasons, there's a lot I'm skipping over. There's a lot of like screen grabs and and it's like, I thought about it and it's like, man, I mean, the amount of situations that, you know, they've slipped my mind Oh yeah, there was that one buck, or whatever. I forgot all about that. But I mean, it's wild when you've done it that way for so long and over that amount of time, out in the field. And then, a few years ago, I did, it'll be in the next season. I did a hunt and I showed up and Tanner and Funky was there and I kind of came in and I already had a feeling I was going to get one. I don't know, I don't generally get that, but it was just like a spooky feeling. I felt like before I even drove to that state, I just had that feeling. It doesn't come from within really. And it did. I mean, it came together like I showed up and boom, boom, boom. I think it was day 3 or something like that. And it was like 4-yard shot, a really good animal and Tanner and Funky and Tanner, he was like, I can't believe you just did that. I can't believe you just, and he's like, you haven't even hunted, hardly at all, like last year or whatever, or in the last, I mean, this is your first. And I was like, well, you got to remember, I'm sitting behind a computer editing all these hunts. So I lived a lot of these hunts over the years. Then I get to edit all these hunts. So like, I'm actually kind of pretty well oiled coming in.
Right.
Because I'm sitting behind a computer watching, and you pick up things that you didn't sometimes out in the field and you're reliving all those moments and it gets ingrained. So you've got all them experiences over the years, but then on the editing side, it just gets baked right into you, every little thing that went
it's
wrong.
it's like a football player going through walkthroughs. It's like you repping that thing over and over and over again, even though you're physically not doing it, but you're mentally seeing it and processing it thousands of times,
Right. And I hadn't really given it too much thought and, on that side until, I don't know, maybe a year or two before that. It kind of hit me. I'm like, yeah, because I've edited all these, I've got, it actually has increased, I feel like,
right. Well, you all like, as you're producing this stuff, it's like you almost have to put yourself in the hunt, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To visualize how it needs to come together. Right. And so it's not like you're a passive observer, just, and I do think like I've picked up stuff from watching your videos, you know what I mean? Like on how you guys approach playing the wind or how you approach, deer that are bedded versus deer that are maybe a little bit more active, or, deer that maybe have a doe or two with them, or a deer that's in CRP versus in a cut cornfield, or whatever the case is, you know what I mean? I've picked up stuff just from watching the videos, and I'm not putting myself in the hunt. I'm watching it as an observer, as entertainment, and I'm still getting stuff and it's not, I mean, it makes sense to me that the person who's producing this stuff has to put themselves in that to understand like what is going to make this storyline come together, Right.
Well, and that's one of the things that I liked about right from the beginning of the whole series 17 years ago. We decided we're going to show our mistakes and our blunders and all of that, the things that went wrong. And at that time, hunting content, I didn't feel they were really doing that much of. You'd see it occasionally, but it was, when I think about that now, that was actually a pretty risky move.
Oh, 100% it was.
Because it's like we're launching our first DVD with a lot of shown mistakes and failures and all of that, and that's our debut. And and I think hunting content nowadays shows a lot more than it used to, and obviously it comes down to the the producers of the show or whatnot of what they're going to show. But I liked it from the beginning of the standpoint is like showing the world, hey, here's our mistakes. I liked that because you're facing the truth of what went wrong by default. Yeah. If you're willing to put it out there, to the people, you're not sugarcoating it. So I knew deep in my mind, I'm like, this is gonna have some effects where we really get honed too. That's what I believed, because we're gonna hone in on what actually, rather than just like nobody sees that.
Nobody sees this. You never have to revisit it, right? Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's just you put that kind of fake facade. Well, you're never facing the thing that went wrong. You make and two, you got to be really dissective with it, because you can easily you don't want to place failure where it wasn't the failure, because that's deceptive too. Like, oh, this happened here, but that is that the real root of what went wrong with the situation. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. I think the other thing that I was thinking of too is, as you were saying that, was, if you start to live that facade world, like through your content or whatever, right? Like if you guys would have decided to say, hey, we're only going to show like clean kills and no screw ups and whatever, right? Like you also start to believe that that's real too, right? Like you also start to get a false impression of who you actually are and what you really are, right?
Yeah.
Which is, never mind the component of like fooling people who are watching. Like you're starting to now fool yourself a little bit, right? And then you start to lose yourself a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And it's just a bad.
And once it gets to that point, it's getting what's called pathological.
Yeah.
To where you don't even realize
the difference between you and like the thing on the screen. Yeah.
You don't even realize, to a certain degree. I mean, I don't really fully believe that. I still think that you kind of know, but you're not really aware of it or see it as like a big deal.
Or you're resistant to recognize it,
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that can trickle over into, outside of hunting too,
100%, man. Yeah. I mean, the way you do anything is the way you do everything, right?
Right. I mean, you're coding yourself. It's just like, archery. Take archery, for example. You can reprogram certain things. It's the same thing with behaviors. It's the same thing with, you're coding yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. What's funny is when you mentioned that year you've had that spooky feeling like that. Like I had that feeling last year before we left. Cameron and Chad, or Cameron specifically, asked me. He's like, "Hey, what do you think's going to happen?" And I was like, "I'm gonna kill a good deer in the first 2 days." And sure as shit, I found that deer on the first day and I killed him on the second day. And there was something that happened at the beginning of that trip when I knew it was going to be good, and I tagged you guys in it because I got a flat tire in Ohio. Like I just left Ohio and got a flat tire, and it took me like a day and a half to find a tire. Right. And I was late getting out there, and I was like, yeah, this has got whitetail adrenaline written all over it. I was like, I'm gonna kill a good deer this year.
Yeah. You gotta roll with it,
Yeah. It's so man, I'm curious, since you've been doing this in just, the style of hunting you've been doing and having whitetail adrenaline and working on that for as long as you've been, like, let me ask it this way. How have you evolved as a hunter? How has your approach evolved over the years, just like based on the experiences you've had?
That's kind of a tough one to actually answer, because I've been very aggressive for so many years at it. I'd say, has your mindset changed at all, like over the years, like, the way you approach hunts any differently? I would say, yeah, if I went back to situations 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I'd play my cards a little bit differently, in some of those situations. That's just part of, learning and advancing, and you get other, you learn other techniques and methods that maybe you didn't, little things that Well, I mean, take the decoy or take, I mean, yeah, that'll be a good one. It's a tool, but it's not always best to use it. It's not a one size. Oh, I can just throw this out there and it works. There's a lot of times it's not a very good idea to do that. And so the more experiences you get, the more you get really fine tuned on how you're gonna approach. And I most certainly I already know I've evolved a lot, even in the last few years. Although I haven't done that much hunting, but I can play the situation differently in certain ways. I don't want to go into too many details on it, but in ways that I would have killed some bucks that I didn't before, or likely would have killed them. That. Take like that Brow-tine buck that I was chasing for a week in Resurgence. That was 2019. Well, I think I would have killed him a whole different way that I never even dreamed of before at that era. So, but it's kind of a crazy way to explain. So
right.
I'll just
Isn't that what keeps us coming back though? Is that evolution, right? Because like you're evolving as a hunter, and then I got to spend some time with you at Harrisburg, and we talked bows because I was starting to shoot a traditional bow and stuff like that, and you've evolved as an archer. And I got to tell you, man, like that was, getting to hang out with you and watch you shoot a little bit was it was inspiring, to be honest with you. Like, and it was interesting, and I'll give you your flowers. I don't do this often on the show, but it was I walked away from, like, because we spent like maybe a half hour, 45 minutes hanging out. We were at your booth, and then we went to the archery range, and you shot a little bit, and we were chatting. And you were chatting, talking to me about some traditional archery stuff, and helping me out, trying to get a better understanding of what I needed to do or what I should be doing. And it's very personal. And that was like one of the things that I kind of got from you, right? It's like, there's some baseline things, but it's all personal. Right. And I felt like in that 45 minutes, like I understood you in Whitetail Adrenaline way better than I ever did. Right. And it made a lot of sense to me, like the care and the, why Whitetail Adrenaline, like the final product is so good, as good as it is, right? And I was trying to explain it to somebody because I had a video of you shooting. I showed a buddy of mine. I was like, look, here's Jared shooting. I was like, it's crazy, man. I was like, I've never seen anybody shoot like this before, And they were, and I forget exactly what they said. And it was Chad and I, we were talking. I think it was Chad. And I said, I understand Jared's approach now, not just to hunting, but like to his films. I was like, is because I was like, you're not watching someone, at least I felt this way. I wasn't watching someone who was like really good with a stick bow. And I wasn't watching someone who had mastered their craft. What I had said was like, I felt like I was watching an artist, because whenever I was in, doing music and stuff like that, like you would run across guys that were masters of a guitar or masters of something. Right. And then every now and then I would have the privilege to like play with a musician or work with a musician that just, it wasn't what they did. It was just what they were, and that was the sense that I got in watching you shoot, was that this isn't what he does. This is what he is. And so everything else made sense. Is that fair? But I wanted to tell you that because I was,
it really is, because when I've got this book that I started, writing down. It's an archery book. It might be 5-10 years. But in there, I might be paraphrasing just a bit, but I wrote like at its deepest level, archery really is an art. And you have individual style that can, you've got these certain kind of guidelines or certain kind of methods, but there's, and sure, you might program in certain things dependent, but eventually you get to a point where you can break out individual style within that, And that's, I think, more what you probably were seeing in Pennsylvania coming through was more of that. And I don't consider myself having mastered what I'm doing with a bow and arrow, and that actually makes it cooler for me, you know. So that I'm still, you know, because I mean, I can identify what I consider a dozen to 15, you know, they've lessened, but there's still faults, what I call faults within the body when I'm doing what I'm doing with it. Now they've lessened. Their fault level has lessened, but I can still detect. And I don't really ever take videos of myself shooting, very rarely, but I can feel it within the body, like, okay, that didn't quite set down or whatever it might be, you know. And so it's cool because I'm hitting next micro levels of what I'm ultimately chasing. And it's really cool to see how far it's come within what I've been chasing with that. And it puts some more tricks in my pocket too. But I mean, it's kind of funny because that's really why I chased what I'm doing with it, was to put tricks in my pocket for out in the field. But it's matured or developed into something much greater and much
deeper,
much deeper than that for me. Much deeper than just that. So
yeah. And that was the sense that I got in watching you, and that's why it made sense to me then, like the care that you take and everything that you do, because, you know, it was like the Whitetail Adrenaline just isn't hunting videos to you. You know what I mean? Like that's how it started making sense to me. I was like, the stick and string isn't just a bow and an arrow to you. It's like a way of expression, right?
Exactly.
And then it made sense, you know, that, you know, because, you know, before I knew you, I would watch the videos and I'd be like, you know, and I knew how, you know, like specific you were about things, like in terms of production, right? Like from some of the very brief conversations we had, and even just from like having some mutual friends and stuff like that. And I was always like, man, why doesn't he just put it on YouTube? Like, just, you know, like the level of production that he's finishing, like I don't understand it, right? Like it's great. Like I love it. You know what I mean? But I was like, man, that's a lot of effort to go through, you know? And then when we spent some time together this winter, it all made sense to me. I was like, because this isn't just video of hunts. I was like, this is an expression. This is art. He's making art. And then it totally made sense because I've done the same thing with music, where it's like, to everyone else, that song was done and fine. And I'd be like, it's missing something. You know what I mean? It's like, and I could sit there and I could noodle for weeks on a song. You know what I mean? And it was because it hadn't met my vision yet. You know, and
you sometimes it's like, you know, something's missing, but you just don't know what it is. It's just not quite, you know, quite where it needs to be. You know, and not that YouTube, you know, you brought up YouTube. I mean, there's just, I can't justify it because of how much time and effort and work goes into the finished product. I can't wrap my head around putting that on YouTube. All that time and effort and work goes into that. It just wouldn't, it just wouldn't fit me. It wouldn't, you know, the way YouTube works really well generally is more. And,
yes.
And that's not really me, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's like, you watch your stuff. It's not more. It's better. You know, and that's to me, like that to me is like what sets you apart. Like there's a bunch of things that set you guys apart, but like, that's the thing. Like when you watch it, you know, like I have Resurgence on my phone, right? So anytime I fly, because I'm constantly flying to Chicago for work. So every time I'm on the plane, like I rewatch Resurgence, like in 2-hour increments at a time, like while I'm on the flight, right? So I must have seen that one like 100 times probably, right? Yeah. And every time it's like I find little like Easter eggs in it every time, because now I know it so well. It's like I find little different things, like production things that like I didn't notice the first like 90 times I watched it. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that, you know, whenever you have someone that takes real good care of something, right? It's the same thing with music. There's great bands that I loved growing up that I still love, and I still listen to their records, and the records are 30 years old, and I find something different in a song that I've known for 30 years, you know? Yeah. And that's when you're really making art to me, whenever that happens, because it's just, there's layers of understanding, there's layers of enjoyment that you get out of it.
Yeah. Well, you know, and with what you just said there, right before I jumped on this, a guy had left a comment and said that he's got all the videos and watched them many times. And I generally, you know, I've heard that a lot, you know, over the years. Like, I watch them all the time. I've watched them X amount, but I don't really ever ask. But I actually, or I shouldn't say I don't ever ask. I rarely ask somebody how many times. But from the beginning, I never produced any of them with the intent that they'd be one-time watches.
Right.
And before I started Whitetail Adrenaline, I was like, there's a handful of movies I watch, and I watch them again, and I watch them again. They're my faves, you know. And what makes them rewatchable? And I wanted to replicate that with you know, yeah, people are spending, you know, on those single discs $20 or whatever, you know. But I was like, it'd be cool if it was worth watching 10 times.
Yeah.
It only cost $2 a time. You know what I mean? It's like good value.
Right.
That's the way I kind of thought in the beginning, was, you know, I've come a long ways in developing better as an editor, but at that time I always have tried to put out a higher level production quality than the one previous. It's just not something that I'm like, it's who I am. You know?
Well, it goes back to the part of the mastery thing, right? It's like, you know, there's something, and I don't know, maybe it's something as we get older or something like that, where, you know, for me, what I've, you know, learned about myself to a degree is that, you know, I love hunting, you know, I love archery hunting, right? And, you know, and I'm foolishly stepping into the world of a stick and string, right? And I love chasing whitetails, right? And I love chasing elk, right? And I love doing jiu-jitsu, and I love like all these things that you could spend your entire life doing them and you'll never master it. Like, there's no possibility of it. And like, I realized, like, I like things that have no possibility of mastery, because there's this constant ability for it to be new to me, right? And I feel
you never get to arrive.
Right, exactly. And it's that process that I love, you know. And for me, it's like when I watch you guys' videos, and like in hunting just in general, right? Like your hunts, if you just even take the video component away, like your hunts, like you're watching like someone chase a moment in time that you'll never replicate and you'll never master it, because the same thing will never happen again. Right. You know, and that's the part that I like about it, you know, and I'm imagining like you probably like that too. It's that kind of knowing that the ride will never stop, I guess is a way to say it.
Well, and that's the thing too, is it's like these storylines that we've captured over the years, there's just so much different, you know, like how do I say this? It's like I'm doing right now. I yesterday's post, I posted a flashback of this big buck Shay got. And as I got near the end of how many words you can write on Instagram, I'm like, we haven't even shot the buck yet. And we haven't even shot the buck yet. And there's so much more to this story. Right. And it's like, you can't replicate all these details of, you know, and that's the cool thing, is it's like, now the next story might be totally different in a whole different way. You know, this one, and then this story ends up continuing on in a very interesting way a couple years later. So, but yeah, I mean, I think too that's what makes producing our content extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Is because it is a mountain of events that have been captured, and it's you can't plug most editors into our production, at least storyline editors, you know, your rough cutters, and expect that they're going to be able to assemble
do it justice.
Because you're beyond an editor as a rough cutter. You're a storyline writer, and you're not writing a script with a pen and paper, but as you're going through mountains of content, you're deciding what's going to make a great story and what's going to, and that takes so much time to weed out unnecessary things, or, you know, sometimes you might have something that's really funny, but it disrupts your entire flow of everything. And sometimes you can make it work, but sometimes it's like, man, I really want to put that in there, but it's screwing up the flow, you know?
Right.
So it's very fun. It's very draining, to produce them, but it's very rewarding at the end. You know, it's, recently I mentioned to somebody that I've never regretted how much work I put into each one of them.
Right.
You know, and I haven't.
Yeah.
So,
dude, I'm imagining the amount of times you've gone back and looked at footage, like even like old footage and stuff like that, you know, for whether it's to like find something, you know, that you're looking for, or just like to go back to like, hey, I want to watch this thing again. I want to see this, like this footage again, or whatever the case is. Like, when you think back to like all the hunts that you've done, whether it's captured on film or not, is there any particular deer that got away from you that still, like, to this day that you think about, you're like, man, like I can't believe that happened. Like this still bothers me.
Can't really see him there, but the Mega Brow-Tine in Calm Before the Storm.
Yeah.
That one does sting.
Yeah. So why is that?
Well, because I love Brow-Tines.
Okay, I didn't know that. You're a Brow-Tine guy.
Yeah, I love Mega Brow-Tines. And, you know, I think that one on the one side was probably 14 inches.
Jeez.
The other was probably 12 or 13 or somewhere around there. And, I mean, he was a big 5x5, typical, you know, probably in the low, you know, 180 range. And I had him, you know, I had him right. Everything was so dialed. It was, you know, he was going to be my first longbow buck at that point. And the plan would have worked. I know the plan would have worked exactly perfect, but I got this silly idea. I got up there. He was in these real thick weeds that were pretty tall. And I got up there, and I was struggling to find him, and I knew I was gonna, and I knew I'd be close when I found him. And I picked him up with the binoculars, just his eyeball, through the weeds at about 22 yards. And I got this stupid idea that I thought we needed to get a video clip of him in the weeds. And there's no way you would have ever seen him in the weeds. So I got Andy up there with the camera, but I had him perfect I had him set up perfect to do what I had planned. And then I decided, come here, Andy, let's get a shot of him in the weeds. The weeds were so thick you weren't even going to see it as a viewer. And that's flew it. And all I literally had to do at that time, okay, I got him. He's 22 yards. and he's in position to film. All I literally had to do was slowly lower my body, get set, and make a little noise with some weeds, and maybe one little buck grunt. And he would have come charging right through them weeds, never seen me till he hit the lane and been probably 5-10 yards. And it would have been beautiful. So, and, I mean, for people that haven't watched that in Calm Before the Storm, so I think it was 2 or 3 days later, we had a different buck, same exact scenario, and it played out exactly how I would have dreamed. Now, he did get the drop on me, and my arrow went right over his vitals, but that's what I had, and I was on top of this buck in a way where I think he would have been 5-10 yards and come charging through them weeds and broke the open, and I think I probably would have longbowed my first buck a 180 typical 5x5 with mega brows bigger than I've ever probably seen.
Good Lord,
so
man.
yeah, that one stings because of that. So
yeah,
but you don't get them all. So.
Yeah, you live and you learn, right?
Yeah,
that's a tough one to chew though, man. A big deer like that, all set up. Like, so how long?
It was tough to chew for me because I knew, because I had already watched what he did with a couple of satellite bucks that had come in. And he'd come charging right through. So I knew all I needed to do was get up there and make a little noise and sound like a satellite buck. And I'd already watched his behavior to know that he's going to come charging right through them weeds and hit the open lane. And I'm going to be right there down like a cat. And he's going to be like, what the hell's that? But it's going to be too late.
Mm-hmm. Man.
And I had him right there. Like, I had everything. And I decided the viewers need a clip in the
of
weeds.
his eyeball.
Yeah, that you're not even going to see the eyeball.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
Yeah, head to palm moment,
Right. How long did you watch that buck before you made the move on him?
2 hours maybe. We didn't watch him real long, and then to get the wind right, we needed to do a big loop, and so. Mm-hmm. I think we got our visual and, probably started making our way in 15, 20 minutes or a half hour or something like that.
So what you were saying about that visual, what's that?
It took us 3 hours to get in there and then that happened.
So what you talked about the visual there was I call it, like, for me at least, it's probably the most important thing that I've learned from you of all the stuff that you've shared with me was that behavior you just talked about. Like, knowing what that deer is going to do because you've watched him do it before, and that was huge for me because that's ultimately how that deer got killed last year, how I killed him, because I watched what he had done with a couple does, and it wasn't just him. It was watching a big deer the year before, what he did with does that time of year and how they were being gentlemanlike and they hadn't cut him out yet. So I knew that they weren't ready to breed yet. And so I knew I had like a small window to like play the game, probably a day. And that was probably about it. And it was like paying attention more so to that behavior of the deer and how he was treating the deer around him was what really kind of sealed the deal. And that's ultimately going back to what we talked about at the very beginning. That's ultimately what, when I understood like what getting the visual was. It's not just like, yes, like knowing where he's at, like if you're going to put on a stock, right? But also get that visual to understand how he's navigating his world, how he's navigating his landscape, like not just physically, but like, mentally, emotionally, right? Like how he's treating other deer, how he responds to them and things like that. His posture, his nature.
Right. Every deer has a different, they're okay. It's another big buck, but they all have their personalities and their behaviors and their, it's like some bucks I've seen them. They'll let a satellite buck come right in there and not even, and other ones will come 80 to 100 yards to defend and protect their doe, and so studying them and knowing that gives you'll know what's going to work and what's not and how they're going to respond. And that's going back to the one I just described. It's like I knew what he was going to do if I got up there and did this, and I knew exactly. And then here, let's get this clip.
Right.
Okay, brilliant. So,
Oh man, but how often does that happen? You know what I mean? Like it's you. Sometimes we get a little greedy. You know what I mean?
I was getting greedy for the viewers on something that they wouldn't have even appreciated because
that's what makes it even worse. Because like the funny thing is like when you would have done the edit, that probably wouldn't even made it in because like you wouldn't have been able to see anything.
Probably would have, like, because it would have been like a Where's Waldo? He's in there somewhere.
Okay, right.
Probably would have. I mean, it did make the video. I think
Right.
there was a shot trying to find but
Right.
yeah, where's he at in the weeds? Oh, there he goes.
Right. Yeah, man. It's yeah, I mean, you live and you learn, right? Like that's part of it,
Yeah,
And
I've done pretty well at handling the ones that have got away, not letting them eat at me too much. But that one will probably always eat at me a little bit.
right.
So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's especially when we make silly mistakes. One of my favorite like sequences of specifically resurgence is actually bless you, and is when Chancey screwed up on that big deer looking at his phone. Like that was because he's usually pretty calm and cool. You know what I mean? Like from what I know of him, from what I've watched of him.
You see his personality and the way it is, but when he's in the woods, he is very on point. And him being on his phone like that is not. I mean, he takes his hunting serious.
Yeah.
He's not playing games. He goes in there. He's not farting around on his phone when he shouldn't be. And that's why he was so mad at himself, is because he is very on point with all those. And that's one thing you learn as you develop as a hunter, and you get, it's like, that was another thing I wrote not that long ago in one of the posts, was in this game of hunting how we hunt, a lot of things got to go right, and all it takes is one of those right things to go wrong, and it's over.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't get any favors with that style of hunting. Like that's, I mean, in the couple years I've been trying it, or doing it, like that was probably the biggest slap in the face, like biggest abrupt slap in the face that I had. There was many, but that was one of the biggest, was just how on point you have to constantly be, right? There's no margin for error whenever you're trying to get that close and stuff like that.
Yeah. And we've been, I think about that, and we've been very fortunate to have the amazing film guys that we've got, because they got to be really on point.
Dude, I think they almost have to be more on point because
they do, because they got to capture the story and go undetected, and usually they're more exposed than the hunter, and in my opinion, they got to be more on point than the hunter.
Yeah. How do you this is off the topic of hunting kind of, but how do you pick your camera guys? Because that's got to be kind of like that's not easy, man. Like, because like they got to be handy with a camera, right? They got to be able to be sneaky, right? And they got to be a good hunter, right? Like they can't be a hack, right?
Yeah.
And they got to also not be a douche, because you're going to spend a lot of time with them.
Right. And that's kind of my baseline right there, is, and we've had a lot of guys over the years reach out to film, and I like them, but we just don't have room and whatnot. But
right.
But I definitely gotta like you, and gotta I did this hunt years back, and I hadn't worked with this guy ever before, and he had a background, and well, it didn't go that well on a number of fronts.
Long story short, it didn't go that well.
And I tolerated things I normally wouldn't have in the hunt to just get through the hunt. And I stupidly paid him when I had a deep suspicious gut feeling. And it was a feeling that I just come over me, and I paid him what I agreed to, and he left, and I think he knew that I knew something was up. I didn't really know, but I just had a feeling come over me, and then found $800 worth of gear missing, 2 different items.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I reached out to him and said, "Hey, gave him the chance to
come clean." Yeah.
Come clean, or not really come clean, just I gave him an out. Like, "Hey, can you check your backpack? I'm missing this and this, and see, we must have," I'm thinking, put it in there, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I know.
Right.
I know, because gear don't go, like, I have organized, it's chaos with the equipment, but I don't have gear go missing. Like, I have tabs on things, and
right.
They were both brand new items that hadn't been used. So, but no, he didn't have them.
Yeah.
So,
of course, yeah, they don't have them.
So.
Yeah, man, it's and then on top of that, it's like they got to be good at what they got to be.
Yeah. So I got sidetracked telling that story, but yes, a baseline. That's kind of the baseline, and then it's like, two completely different. I'll give you 2 examples. Is now, like, Matt, he's been filming when it works out in his schedule with me for a number of years, and he come in, and this is what he does for a living, and he's very good, and filmed a lot of the Uncharted stuff with Jim Shockey, and we hit it off great, and he is really on point. Now, on the polar opposite, Ethan, who films with us, he came in completely no background in filming, but I liked him. And he really, one of the strengths Ethan has is great strengths, is his ability to recognize, I could have done this better, and I should have done it this way, and I should have done it that way, and da-da-da-da. And he has advanced tremendously in filming, but that's 2 polar, completely, different spectrums of the film guys. And now we got TC as well as one of the film guys, and he's got a really high-end skill in photography and video as well. So now one of the challenges with all these guys, and not so much with Matt, because a lot of the stuff he's filmed has been, unscripted to a certain degree, at least. So he already came in pretty understanding of when to film and when not. And that's one of the struggles with anytime pretty much that I've injected somebody new into the films. They're like, should I film this? And I'm like, I don't know. Do you think there's a good event unfolding potentially?
Right.
Like, and it's like, there's no answer to that. And so it takes some time in this environment for a guy to really get
they almost have to have the same sense as like when you're hunting, right? It's like, because you're, as a hunter, like in the stuff you guys are doing, you have to have that feeling of, is the situation right? Am I in the right spot? Do I need to make a slight adjustment? Do I need to, like, and they're kind of trying to figure out the same stuff on the fly while you're also trying to do it. You know what I mean? It's right. Like, because the hunt kind of comes first, right? Like you have to figure that part out, but then as that's unfolding, they got to kind of be kind of freestyling to a degree based off of what the hunter's going to do.
Right. Yeah. It's, there's so much that goes into it to get it done right, that it's that's why it's so hard to duplicate.
That's why it's not been duplicated. I mean, nobody else is doing it.
And it's, you can hand the same hunt to 100 different editors, and it's gonna come out different every time. or 1,000 antlers. It's going to come out different every time. And there's so many aspects that take it from the start. You know, it takes the guys filming and making sure they're getting captured what needs captured and getting the shots and getting the storyline content and everything. And then it takes the post-production to really bring it all the elements that are necessary to life. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's got a with most products you can duplicate it. You can look at it and engineer it identical or change
close.
A couple small things on it. But with video, with video production, it's very hard, at least in this space of how we do it. It's very hard to duplicate that. And we've been very blessed to have some very crazy stories.
Yeah, you have, yeah.
With different, whether we had to get a game warden involved or, it's just, when I think about the dynamic of different storylines and whatnot, we've been very blessed. I mean, those don't come from a script, those just develop, and we've been very fortunate to have that on a lot of different hunts. So
when you think about your upcoming season, what are your goals? What do you want? What do you hope that, I don't want to say hope, because we don't really ever hope. We put in the work to try to manifest the things that we want. But what is your vision for this upcoming season?
Well,
like as a hunter, and then maybe as content.
Yeah, I don't really spend too much time setting goals on the hunting side too much. More on the production generally. I'd say, because in how we hunt, it's just too, we're not out there pre-scouting. We don't know. I have a good feeling about this fall. I pretty much always have a good feeling about the fall. And so we'll see how those cards, unfold. There's some very unique things. I hope I get a deer in certain situations. I've had some, I don't want to call them goals, because that's not really, that's just dependent on the situation. If I'm blessed to get that situation, I guess.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I understand.
I can't force a deer to do one thing, but if a deer does this, I know I might be able to do this in this scenario.
Right. Do you ever visualize things before hunts?
Yeah. In terms of what though?
So, just going back to last year, just as an example, was once I got that visual, in that evening, I didn't talk to anybody about it. I think I texted Chad, and I was just like, "Hey,
good idea. Good idea."
Yeah. It was the smartest thing I did the entire time.
Yeah.
I think I text Chad just like one sentence, just like, I think I'm on a good one, and that was all I said. He didn't even respond to me, and because I didn't want any other input. I knew what I needed to go do, and I was just going to go do it, and I didn't need anybody to try to change my mind and make me second guess what I already knew. And but as I was sitting in, because I was in my hunting trailer, and I was solo hunting last year, and so I ate dinner, and I was sitting there, and as I was getting ready to go to bed, I visualized where I was going to set up. I visualized actually him coming in. I visualized killing him multiple times, right? And then it almost felt like whenever the hunt happened, and I think that's why I was so vividly able to remember everything that happened in the hunt, was because it was almost like it had already happened. It just all unfolded how I had played it out in my mind previously, And so I'm just curious if you ever do that, when you're in a situation where you visualize the hunt coming together, and it might happen slightly differently, but you do it to kind of frame your mind correctly. So I don't want to say you're on autopilot mode, but you're making decisions super quick and almost without thought.
It's I'm a very visionary type minded person. But over the years I've learned to not visualize and get too fixated, because that causes me to be rigid, which calculated, and it can hurt me on adaptability. So I might visualize how something might play out, but it's very loose. Like, okay, I hope he does this, and this is what I think will work if he does, but I don't get too fixated on it because it's imaginary land. I don't know if that deer's going to be there tomorrow. I don't know if he's going to do that. I don't want to get too hung up on that, because okay, if he does that, I know exactly what I'm going to do kind of with that situation. But I don't want to get too carried away with that, because then I'm also, when he doesn't do that or I don't find him again, there's a bit of a collapse that can happen.
All right, folks, we're back. Jared and I had to take a little potty break. There's too much hydration going on. Had to hit the bathroom. But so go ahead, Jared. You were going to pick up there.
Yeah, one thing I do visualize more and more is how I would execute a situation with the bow and arrow. I do visualize that, or I flash back to previous situations and what I would do now in that situation that I wasn't either capable of before, or it never occurred to me as an option. But as far as the hunt goes, I don't want to go into it like, oh, I'm going to shoot one in this using this method. It's right. All like, I may do that, if this situation presents itself and it makes sense, I have this ability to do it like this. And right. Most of it's been flashing back to situations that I've had where it's like, now I could have done it a whole different way and got a whole different result.
Right.
And at some point I'll be in a situation where something similar is presented, and I'll be like, oh, know what to do here.
Right. Yeah. Man, so, I'm curious, what, I mean, you've been hunting a long time, whitetail adrenaline, 17 years, I think you said, which is a super long time. What is it about bow hunting, whitetail specifically, that keeps you coming back year after year and keeps you excited?
I mean, they're
hitting you with the tough ones tonight, dude.
Well, I mean, they're crafty animals, I mean, Matt, he's filmed so many species of animals and around the world. Last I knew, he had been to 37, I think, countries.
Wow.
And that was years ago. I don't know how many he's been to now, but and he's, he puts them right up there, a mature whitetail. And I think that's one of the things Matt really likes about the hunting style too, is you got to be on point. Like, you can't, there's no, I mean, you can get away with some things occasionally, like it's like, oh, you got lucky there.
Right.
But they're very on point. I think that's one of the things that keeps me coming back to them. There's a handful of other species that I'd, someday, hopefully I'm blessed to, go chase them a little bit, but I don't think they'll trigger me quite the same as a whitetail. Although elk, I've chased them, with a longbow, and that's right up my alley too,
Yeah.
Trying to kill the herd bull with a longbow with a whole bunch of other elk around and film it and everything. I got humbled on that. I didn't think it was going to be that difficult. And, I would have been a lot better off with a compound. I kind of got blindsided by that a bit. I didn't.
Right.
I don't know why. I just didn't really do the math. Like, yeah, I might have 20 animals I got to fool here, and so my range is going to be a real problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny though, because like even chasing elk, it's Chad and I talk about this occasionally because Chad loves hunting elk. Like, and I think if I'm not mistaken, like just in conversation, he was like, if someone said he could only hunt elk and that would be it, like he could only do a trip in September, like he would be okay with that. And I'm the opposite, where if someone told me I could hunt elk, but I couldn't hunt whitetails, I would rather hunt whitetails for whatever reason, but I have a bucket list hunt that I want to do. And my bucket list hunt, if I could just do, not that I would give up whitetail hunting, but like if I could do one hunt ever in my life that I would love to do, it's brown bear with a bow, right? That's what I would love to do, right? That's like my bucket list hunt. My wife tells me I can't do it until like we're older. That way, if I die, it's not a big deal. But so what's your?
It's gonna be gone in 5 years anyway.
Yeah. He only had a couple left in him anyway. What's your bucket list hunt?
I wanted bears brown bear has crossed my mind. I think it'd be something I'd probably just do once.
Yeah, for me, it'd be a one and done type of thing.
Yeah, with a long bow. And probably moose, like Alaskan moose, would probably also be like a one, maybe once in a decade or something. And I don't know, till I do it, I think I'd be as addicted to it as deer or elk? No,
right.
I don't. There's a handful of others, but I kind of got bored with whitetails years back a bit, or bored. I shouldn't say bored with whitetails, but more it wasn't chasing them in the setting. I grew up with a lot of swamp and timber. I mean, I did a ton of swamp stuff growing up, and then migrated more into the timber stuff and the bluffs and hills and stuff. I did some of that when I was younger, but in the video series, I got a lot higher dose of it, I'd say. And leading up to the video series, I got a lot higher dose of it. And then I went more to the prairies, which I had a little bit of prairie experience when I was younger too. So it was all like new, fresh. How do we figure out how to kill these deer in these desolate grounds? And, here again, the science project is a totally different science project. And, I kind of got to a point where that's what actually triggered me to start doing some elk hunting out west is the mountain experience and more so.
Right.
And then I actually really loved chasing them. And so, but I very much still love hunting whitetails.
Yeah. Yeah. I just got back from Idaho and got my butt kicked. It was northern Idaho, and that's like just brutal country, super thick timber. Like it's a humbling place, there's this thing that I have that part of me doesn't want to go back because it's just probably like one of the hardest places to try to hunt elk in general. But part of me wants like to continue to go back until I finally do it, and then I can like go somewhere else. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, I did that. I'm good. I don't need to do that ever again. Because it's kind of miserable and it's hard. But man, we've been chopping it up for almost an hour and a half. I'm going to ask you one more question, and I'm going to let you get out of here.
All right.
Whenever you're making the Whitetail Adrenaline videos, and you're thinking of the viewer, what do you hope, if nothing else, comes across to the viewers that they can take away from what they're watching?
I would say this goes back to early on in producing them. I wouldn't say I necessarily produced the first one with this mindset, maybe not even the second, but somewhere in that early years stage, it hit me like people have these crazy lives with all kinds of chaos and whatever going on. And I was like, if I can produce this and they put it in their player and it takes them out of their potentially terrible day or terrible whatever's going on, and because that's kind of what a good movie does for any of us too, is it gives us a break for, say, 2 hours from everything else going on in life, and maybe everything's going great at that time. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, you have times that are great and times that aren't. I mean, and that is one thing that I thought about, and that kind of goes back to also what we were talking about earlier with making them good enough that they're rewatchable. Like, I want to watch this again. I want to watch this again. I didn't catch that, and that's one thing I picked up on those movies that I would rewatch, is I had watched them multiple times, and I'd pick up something new, and then it was still cool. And so I guess to answer your question, that's something that I have thought of, like it's in the back of my head, but I don't sit there editing, producing with that constantly in my head. I'm trying to create the best thing I can out of what I got to work with that's going to be enjoyable and really suck people in and make them feel like they're right there, which ultimately takes them out of their potentially terrible day for, a little while. And there's a lot that could answer that question though too. I mean, we talked about it already, the putting the failures in there and the things that go wrong. I had a guy, I think it was this year at the shows. It was the year before. He said, I watch your videos 3 times, and the first time I watch it purely to be entertained. And the next time I watch it, I forget which order it was in, and I'm missing the third point. But the second time or third, I'm paraphrasing. The first was definitely just to kick back and be entertained, and then it was like the educational side of, okay, what did these guys do wrong? And I'm missing the third, but I wish I would have wrote it down because it was really, I mean, really, I found pretty cool.
Right. Yeah. And I get that. Cause like, there's like, again, like I said, like I've watched Resurgence a bunch of different times. And so like, I've watched it so many times now to where I start thinking through like how I would play out the hunt, cause there's one hunt specifically in that like is probably one of my favorites. It's the one where Chansey canoes in and kills that buck. They drop the camera in the current, and if you know what I mean, like I don't want to give it all away if someone hasn't watched this yet, right? But that's probably one of my favorite hunts to watch and replay because that's exactly kind of how it feels most similar to how I hunt, right?
Yeah.
And because I use some water access, I kayak into some places, and I like that kind of like where it was a spot and stalk, but it was really like spot and stalk with an ambush setup type of thing, right? Because I'm probably more of an ambush hunter than I am a pure spot and stalker. And I would watch it and I would figure out like, where's Chansey going to draw? Oh, he drew here. Did he have any other chances to draw? And I'm watching it trying to think about like if there were other ways that could possibly play out. You know what I mean? And it kind of goes back to how you live in it and you get better by living in it because you have to put all this stuff together, right? And I think that your viewers have the same chance to do that because you kind of bring them into the world, right? And so you have a chance to actually play out those hunts and maybe think about how you might do something differently. Would you set up a little bit differently, or how might it play out if you set up over here instead, right? Or whatever the case is, right? Like I think that's the unique thing about what you guys do is it is kind of immersive in that way, and yeah, it's super cool, man.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great hunt too. The one that you talked about there. It's like, I mean, here again, the science project. How can we, we don't have much wind. How are we going to get in there quiet? And he played his cards. Chansey's so good at just reading the situation and reading the animal and knowing like this is what he's probably going to do.
Yeah.
I better not get too aggressive right here. I'll cuz he's a impatient guy. But when it comes to when he's got his sights set on a big buck and he's like he'll get ultra patient if he and that was a prime example of, I'm going to push it right to here. This is what I think he's going to do. It's going to take hours, and he,
right.
I mean, it played out exactly how he pictured it. And he's so good at threading that needle of passive aggressive, and just reading the animal so well. He's on another level. I've picked up on some things from him, but he's on another level.
Yeah. I think and that's the cool thing about watching the videos. I get to, watch your hunts and I talk to you obviously more than I talk to Chancey. I've had him on the show once. But I pick up a lot of stuff from him because I feel like I probably am more similar to the way he does things. Right. And for me, that's cool. I'm able to watch someone who I'm like, that's kind of how I do stuff. And man, he's way better at it than me. So let me watch his hunts and pick, and try to start to pick them apart and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, he's just so good at reading the animal and knowing, it's not in the next one, but the season after the 180 typical 5x5e shot. We didn't have much time. Act now. The deer's on private, even though he had uncuffed for it, but we were on public. And he read it perfect. I mean, he finally lost his doe overnight. This is our last chance. If it is him, we got to move now. We moved in. It was him. We got there just in the nick of time. We're scrambling. There's no time. He's got to trust I'm doing everything on point. He ain't got time to check on me. I ain't got time. He knows what he's got to do. He knows exactly what he needs to do to get that deer to commit. The deer was 150 yards out or whatever. He waited for the right time and hit it with what he needed to, read the animal, and then knew exactly when to hit him based on his what his mannerisms, when to hit him with the next vocalization and what. And I mean, he's just you get a deer, a big buck out there, and it's if he's not locked up with a doe, he knows, he can read that animal so well and know exactly when and what to hit him with. And it's like I was filming him and I heard it come through the mic and he goes, he's going to come. He's, he'll be coming, He could read it while he's setting his science project of the decoy up. He's
right.
He's going to come. He's going to break and come,
Right. Yeah.
And he's so, when he says that, he's going to come, he's seen something with that animal that I'm okay, all right.
He's about to go down.
Yeah. Because when he says that, it's no, he is going to come,
Right.
He's so accurate with that.
Right.
And yeah, that's a very special hunt too. The way that he pulled that thing right in and what happened there in that situation is pretty wild.
Nice.
So anyway.
Cool, man. Well, buddy, I don't want to keep you too late here. But before I let you get out of here, let people know where they can find out more about what you got going on and where they can stay up to date with all things Whitetail Adrenaline.
Yeah. Well, our website, whitetailadrenaline.com. I actually built a new website here a couple months ago. Got some other pages I got to add, but that's where you can find us there. And then as of late, we've been real active on Instagram and Facebook with kind of doing these flashback posts, which has been pretty cool. Some old stories and stuff. Yeah, I'll probably get more active with the new Threads thing, although I don't know too much about it, but that's kind of where. And then we do 4 shows a year, travel to. So Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Columbus, Ohio, Wisconsin Dells, and Des Moines, Iowa Classic.
Nice. And we'll get after the season, we'll get back together before the Pennsylvania show. Make sure people know that you're going to be there and stuff. But dude, it's always a pleasure talking to you, man. I love getting to catch up with you. I appreciate all the advice that you've given me. Appreciate what you do with Whitetail Adrenaline, and you're just one of the good guys, man. It's just appreciate our friendship.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. And if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And hell, while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there too. And before I shut this thing down, we need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Osseo Gear, Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, and Genesee Beer. And until next time, we'll see y'all.